Coraline is a very interesting movie because of its unique ability for me to theorize on theories I've created. If you're watching this, I hope you've seen my other parts, or at least parts 7, 8, and 9, because they will allow you to understand this. First, a refresher. I have this theory that the Beldam used to be human, and her son was trapped in the other world by falling down the well, which is actually the main portal. Going after him, she became tethered to the other world, but the son was allowed to roam between worlds so long as he took the form of something like a cat. Needing soul magic to power their world, they attempted at ripping the soul from a boy named Mr. Lovat, but he escaped, growing up to father Wybie's grandmother and being resurrected in the form of a cat to protect his great-grandson. At the end of the film, Mr. Lovat stays in the Pink Palace while Vermin, the son, the other cat, approves of Coraline chucking the key down the well. A portal she has no idea leads right back to the Beldam. But why did they let Coraline escape the other world? Obviously it was because they didn't need to capture her, they needed to break her spirit, and at the end of the film, Vermin disappears back into the other world, so what are they going to do to Coraline next? Here's where I have a few ideas. Theorizer, and if you have any questions like why was Mr. Lovat resurrected as a cat, or what are they going to do to Coraline now, I have some theories, some good ones, and again, these are theories, some without much evidence, but I still find them absolutely crucial to solving the ultimate mysteries this film has to offer. We are beginning to get on the rocky territory of theorizing on my theories, which has very shifty ground, but nonetheless awesome implications. First, the question impossible to logically answer: how on earth was Mr. Lovat resurrected, and why as a cat? It was something I said way back in part 4 because it made sense, but the reasons behind how exactly this is possible are quite hard to decipher. Why resurrection? Why a cat? Well, there's a possibility that he was reincarnated as a feline specifically so that he could fool the other mother. Since Vermin takes the form of a cat quite frequently, it would confuse the Beldam and allow for him slipping in and out unnoticed. It makes even more sense then why Vermin stole Mr. Lovat's voice. They are masking as each other, ultimately confusing both the Beldam and Coraline. But that's just why he's a cat. The resurrection itself, though, is where things get really interesting. It's not a godly entity or biblical thing going on here, it's quite simply the other world's soul power and magic. Mr. Lovat is kept alive by the magic seeping out of the Pocket universe. Whether it be from the well, the door, or the sign portal, it's what's keeping him alive. Think about it like this. He was the first person to move into the house after the Beldam, and after he moved out of it as a child, traumatized, he kept an eye on it, eventually seizing legal control over it. He of course let the Blue Boy's family move in, which was a mistake, as were the families of the next two kids, and his daughter of course was the last straw, but he always stayed. Everybody else was moving away out of fear, probably even his wife, except for of course his remaining daughter, who knew much about the other world because of her twin sister. The only person up until their death who would have stayed there would have to have been the grandma's dad, Mr. Lovat, someone a generation above the grandma. This further proves the existence of Mr. Lovat, as someone had to give the house to grandma. But my point is, he stayed here up until his death. He's the only person in history to die in the immediate region nearby the Pink Palace without being in the other world. This tethers him to the area, but not fully. In other words, his body is not kept alive, but he instead comes to possess the nearest symbolically supernatural animal, the black cat. Mr. Lovat's body was buried somewhere nearby, perhaps near the well or the sign, or the other empty apartment. More on that in a second. His spirit, however, did as I've theorized and found its way. The grandma and her father knew all about the other world, as I prior stated, and it was them who boarded up the well and told Wybie the rumors about a sky full of stars. If Mr. Lovat's corpse was placed in the empty apartment next to Coraline's, then it explains why it's never rented out. It's a very freaky idea, only supported by the fact that it isn't rented out, but since I have literally nothing more to go on, it's quite unlikely that this is the case. The other option is that maybe he was actually the one who dug the well, trying to find the other world, thinking it was underground, and when he did find some form of magical pocket, his spirit vaporized. This too is unevidential and not something I will right now dwell on. Whatever the case may be, we know his ghost, mixed with the other world's soul power, kept him stuck as this cat. We know this is very likely to be the case because we already know how the other spirits react to the other world's soul magic. They aren't quite dead. They have the ability to grab onto things, such as the blanket in their dungeon, and they can willingly lay on the physical bed. They even use their metaphysical hands to close the door for Coraline. They also appeared in Coraline's dream. Dreams are an amalgamation of neurological chemical processes. This, of course, all happened because of the magic seeping, but regardless, they can do things that spirits normally cannot. So is it really such a stretch to say that Mr. Lovat is similar? No, it is not a stretch in the slightest, because everything that dies in the presence of the other world's magic becomes a physical spirit. Physical ghosts, physical cat, bingo. Seeping. It's why the Beldame's hand can remotely move. It's right between three sources of portal magic: the door, the sign, and obviously, of course, the well. It's all very cool, but we aren't even to the main point of this video yet. What's Vermin and the Beldame's plan for Coraline now that they let her go? Well, they're going to slowly break her down, of course. She's about to go to school for a fresh year, and they're going to make the mediocrity of society so boring and tormenting that Coraline is going to willingly return to the other world. It's how they do things. Car crash causes Coraline's parents to be boring and inactive for the first few days. Wonder who triggered that. Old ladies downstairs are practically insane and nuts. Wonder who caused that. The second Coraline returns to the real world, she gets her fun with family and all that she wants, right until they plan to snatch it all away and drive her to her own willing death. It's incredibly devious, manipulative, underhanded, and precisely the kind of thing the Beldame has already been doing. As I said in my third theory all that time ago, there's still a chance that the world Coraline's in at the end of the movie is still more of the other world, all faked. Regardless though, Coraline will be driven back. The seed has been planted. The temptation will grow too great. It's in her personality to act like this, and the Beldame, that psychotic grand dame seamstress, knows this. Something to note is that the distinction between Vermin and Mr. Lovat becomes increasingly blurred up until the end of the film. For example, when Coraline goes through the portal to save her parents, the cat enters it with her, presumably Vermin. Suddenly, he stops, shakes his head out of confusion, and now has the ability to speak. One would think this is because there's only one cat, and Mr. Lovat just regained his ability to speak through the portal, but no. In fact, it's Vermin, who has regained his ability to speak by entering a pocket of immense magic. The line of division gets blurrier, though, such as how Mr. Lovat showed anger towards Coraline despite it being Vermin she threw at the Beldame. There are clearly other things going on, because only the end of the film prominently throws the distinction between them at us. It's all in that final clip, the dramatic thud. I'm not done with Mr. Lovat, though. I think he may have been the person who forged that triangle with the hole in it. Kind of weird that Spink and Forcible had it, and the fact that it actually works on the other world. It means it has otherworld magic inside of it, and that it's directly wired to reveal the truth of the other world. It was forged with the other world in mind, likely by the only person who knew of its true nature, who escaped. This also explains the Beldam's visible sense of joy as she melts away the only object that can foil her fantasy. It's the petty feud she has with Black Cat Lovat. Want a bit of a mind blow? If you look at the other world from this shot, as they are falling into the web, you can see what appears to be a shadow of sorts next to the free hanging wall. The room isn't just floating through extra-dimensional space, it has a ceiling. A white ceiling. This shouldn't come as a surprise, since I've before theorized that the well portal popped out at the moon, which is powered by the Beldam's eyes, and the moon is of course the top of the ceiling. But now we have explicitly visible proof that there's something of an indistinguishable white ceiling to the other world. Also, her wallpaper glows with what appears to be spider-like green magic, but when she uproots the flooring, the glow disappears, and it reveals itself to be simply nothing more than wired spider lights, which are literally plugged in. Is this an indication that the real world has the power to seep through into the other world too? Maybe. What I do believe, though, is that this room has some level of realism to it. Directly above it, or perhaps it itself, is the sewing room we see at the beginning. It outlooks to space. By the way, the ground is not naturally an elongated web, it's a typical floor. She only uprooted it for the multi-legged ease in capturing Coraline. In fact, I bet there's only one room in the other world. Ever. When Coraline gets there, she moves from room to room, but never sees multiple rooms at once. It's because the Beldam is conserving her energy. She's not going to keep all rooms active at once. She only needs to activate the one Coraline's going to be in. Even outside, one room. It finally explains why they dwelled on that one shot of the other father shutting off the light in the kitchen as they all left. The room vaporizes the second after they exit it. The sewing room is real. Perhaps it's even a room in the apartment next to Coraline's, though I have no evidence for that yet. What I do think, however, is that the one room is caused by the real world leaking in. It's no longer just a void. There's a constant and unchanging coordinate, the study room. Another little thing I spotted was how the looking hole punctured in the well was gone at the end of the film. Coraline looked through it, and then it disappeared by the end. This makes me question who put it there in the first place. Clearly, the well is a method of spying, like a looking glass. So someone looked down there to see how deep the well was, or perhaps to see the other world, but at the end, it was covered up so that nobody could experience its horrors ever again. Meaning it was either the grandma or Mr. Lovat who's done this. We know the grandma is primarily bound to her house out of her indelible fear of the Pink Palace, so I bet it was Mr. Lovat. Kitty be shoving hardened dirt into that hole, keeping out any ability for them to spy on the children. This further proves that there may be two cats, as Vermin spent his time in the other world with Coraline, while Mr. Lovat did the required task. Also, I do have a theory that it is a time portal through the fourth dimension, and that the other world is not a pocket universe or alternate dimension, but rather a reality existing outside of space-time, a coordinate of infinity existent before the Big Bang. It explains why the Beldam can create and destroy her own universe. The other world is outside of the laws of physics. Finally, before I finish this pretty solution-filled video, I'd like to stop and look at something seemingly pointless: the apple trees near the well. They're all dead, and one's even been chopped down, likely to make the wood covering for the well. But later in the film, they become trees with pink leaves. They're full and healthy and spring-like. It's as if the Beldam triggering her magic when Coraline arrives caused it all to seep through into the real world and heal everything around the Pink Palace. Just something I noticed to probably prove my theory of magic seeping, and by extension, literally everything else. See you soon for the other explanations I promised back in part 9. Until then, get hyped. I'm the Theorizer.